And welcome, folks, to the talk show, Let the Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Pastor David. And, folks, we got a great show coming at you today. We're going to talk a little bit more about Doge and what it's doing. And also, we're going to dive into Brandon Johnson again. A friend of mine, Byron Daniels, a representative of Florida, was talking to him during the hearings. And he really, when I spoke to him, he really made Brandon Johnson look the idiot that he is. So, folks, if you ain't got nothing to do, y'all come on in, sit back and chill, and let us get it on. Let the truth be told. Let the truth be told. I'd rather for you to hurt me with the truth than come for me with lies. Thank you. And welcome. Folks, first let me give all praises to God and my Lord and Savior, Yahshua, for making it possible for me to be here. And welcome to the show. I want to welcome all my first-time listeners, old listeners, new listeners. Y'all share it around because this is where you're going to get a great conversation and the truth told and find out the truth about what's going on in our society today. Let me say this. To the American people and patriots across this country, we have to understand one thing that has happened since President Trump has taken over. The Democratic Party has went subversive. And what I mean by that, they're planning and scheming things, telling lies and untruth so that they can make the American people think that Trump is not in control, nor does he know how to run this country. But for the past 4 years, we've seen an invasion. We've seen hate of the American way of life. I mean, we've seen everything under the Biden administration that will destroy a country. So now that President Trump is in, he's making changes. And Elon Musk, with the Doge department, is uncovering all sorts of fraud, waste, and abuse. And most of this fraud and waste are done by the Democratic Party leadership for years. They've been stealing money through the Department of Education, you name it. And it's saying that I'm going to bring my co-host in so we can start talking about this. Hey, Doc.
Hey, how's it going?
Man, I'm fighting off the allergies here in Chicago.
I know, you poor thing. Look, I'm down in Georgia, so I can sympathize. I understand.
I think in Georgia, that pollen just lays all over the cars everywhere. When
it does. It does. Our cars aren't green yet, but in the next couple of weeks, till about the first or second week in April, yes, we will have green cars.
Yes. Now, Doc, you know well as I do, the Democrats are spinning all sorts of lies to cover up for the things that they've done over the years. And to the American people and patriots across this country, we have to really respect and be cognizant that what Elon Musk is doing is uncovering all of this waste. Doc, the big thing they've been talking about is the Department of Education. We're going to run some things, talk about that. Go ahead, talk about the Department of Education a little bit, Doc. You did some research on that.
Yes. And see, I guess the assumption is, and this is something that I even had to learn, is that the Department of Education, really oversees the education of the states. And that's not what the department's job is. It does oversee student loans. It does oversee the Pell Grants. It does oversee certain specialty groups, I should say. So children that aren't getting free lunches or that they need, free lunch or different programs like that, they do oversee those things. But truly, the educational part of it is on the state. So the states are already disseminating education from their superintendents down, through their educational processes. So it's not so much that the Department of Education is making those determinations, because I know there have been certain books in certain classrooms for certain age appropriateness that's not appropriate at all, and that the people look to the Department of Education to stop it, but they're not in control of that. It's really the superintendents in those states that are responsible. And because people don't know that, and the superintendents know that people don't know that, and the school boards know that the people don't know that, they blame the Board of Education. And they just let people blame the Board of Education, and they really don't, people, like I said, for lack of knowledge, they perish, but they really don't know that it's actually the superintendents and those on the board allowing these things to happen. So,
well, that has been the big click. And like you say, the states does know. And basically, the states are already running everything in each individual state. Yeah. They use the Department of Education as a bank account to cover the cost of whatever that they need. They use the Department of Education to implement different curriculums, just like they did. And let me say this to the American people and patriots across this country. The Department of Education is totally irrelevant when it comes to education regarding our children. Right. They're basically a slush fund for the politicians. And so when President Trump cut it out, there was nothing there but waste, fraud, and abuse. And I'm going to play a clip so that folks can see it, because what the Democrats want you to believe is that if we cut out the Department of Education, we won't have the milk programs. We won't have free lunch programs. That's what the Democrats are telling the American people, to make them afraid and make them call Congress people and their legislators to fight for the Department of Education. But really, it's nothing but a slush fund. Let's check this out.
The mass layoffs at the Department of Education after the firings and earlier buyouts. The department has been slashed in half since President Trump took office. Senior political correspondent Rachel Scott has that story. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning to you. And these are sweeping and mass layoffs that are happening at the Department of Education, and what the Education Secretary is calling the first step toward dismantling the agency altogether.
Overnight, the Department of Education gutted. More than 1,300 workers told they're being laid off, now cutting the agency roughly in half. Education Secretary Linda McMahon saying those cuts are just the first step.
What we did today was to take the first step of eliminating what I think is bureaucratic bloat.
The department is already the smallest of all cabinet-level agencies, but is responsible for everything from managing federal loans for colleges to enforcing civil rights laws in schools. The leader of the nation's largest teachers union says students will pay the price.
There is no way that that's going to lead to faster service. Calls will go unlistened to. Emails will go unread. We know that.
McMahon asked what will happen to some of the department's critical programs, like Pell Grants and funding for students from low-income families.
We kept all of the right people, the good people, to make sure that the outward-facing programs, the grants, the appropriations that come from Congress, all of that are being met. And none of that's going to fall through the cracks.
McMahon says the president has given her a mandate to strip down the agency and work with Congress to eliminate it. Democrats blasting the Trump administration's push to shrink the size of the federal government.
Throughout this administration, we're seeing cuts. Services will not be provided for, in this particular case, for our schools and the protections for our young people.
So sources say the president has floated the idea of moving some of the agency's work under the Department of Treasury. The president on the campaign trail repeatedly said he wanted to return the power back to the states. It is worth noting that the Department of Education does not decide what is taught in schools. That's already decided at a state and local level, Michael.
Right, right.
Now-
so what the
now-
lady
now-
was saying was
go ahead.
completely disingenuous. She was like, "Oh my gosh, they're not." Stop that.
Yes.
Stop that.
And,
Stop
and,
it.
And you see that's what I'm talking about. It's that type of attitude. And what bothers me the most is we have these type of people who are supposed to be leaders in the Black community.
Right.
They're supposed to be the people that are going saying we got to make sure that our educational system are teaching our kids.
Right.
But these guys have been there forever and they're thieves. That's what makes me so mad. They've been stealing. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and they know they're going to lose the money now because
that's what this is all about.
See, part of Trump's plan is he wants to give the money to the parents so the parents can decide where their kids go to school. So if, let's just say, a parent is in a failing system, that money's not going to go to that failing school the way it is now.
Yes.
And it can go to a private school, or they can do a homeschool pod, right? Where that child is going to get a better education. I just think what's the saddest part about this is with the Democrats and even some of the Republicans, they're not really focused on the education of the children. They're just focused on where the money's going to go.
Yes.
Right. And that's the saddest part to me.
And Doc, you so correct, because the Department of Education, like I said earlier, has been used for a slush fund. And they use the Department of Education to blame all the homosexual teachings that they've implemented into our schools. You know, it just bothers the hell out of me, man, that the Democratic Party is sowing these seeds of discord and trying to make the American people think that President Trump is not on point. But in all actual reality, he is, because it's the states, just like here in the state of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker and a super majority Democratic state, they passed a bill called SB 818. And that was the bill that forced parents to have to come out and fight, because that was the bill that instituted all the homosexuality, the books, the curriculum, the teachings. They also, with him, created legislation to take parental rights, that the school is a surrogate, a third parent to the children. And yet, when it all came down to it, when parents started protesting and going to the states, then they was using the Department of Education as the fall guy to say, well, it's not coming from us. The Department of Education told us we had to do it. But at the same time, you know, we did it so that we could get the funds to keep giving your child free lunches. See, the Democrats is good about using these programs that would affect our children, not to the good, but they use them as a weapon to say that if you don't vote for so-and-so, then he's going to cut this, he's going to cut that, and scare the parents into believing that the Department of Education is the one who's causing the problems. Doc?
Yeah. And it's really, to your point, the superintendent, and especially the boards that we have and in the locality, the school boards. You know, a lot of times and this is something I had to learn, you know, getting into politics, the school board is literally the most powerful board in any state, in any community, because they literally have a ballooned budget and they're running scared, because guess what? It's going to affect some of their budgets as well, right? Because now they're not going to be able to funnel the money. It's one thing to have a budget, but now they're going to have to be more fiscally responsible, because people in the community are going to see, okay, you're not going to say, oh, well, we didn't know we got this money from the government, or the government didn't send the money. You're not going to have that excuse anymore. You're going to actually have to account for every single dollar you spend and where you spend it in these communities. Like in South Bend, Indiana, for example, their whole third grade is not at the reading level they need to be. The entire third grade for the entire city, not just one school, the entire city. Okay. Their babies can't read at 9 years old, or maybe even 10 in the third grade. What did you do with the money? What did you do with the resources? And there's just no accountability. And so now it's time for parents to step up and go to these meetings and start, actually running for these positions to get these other people out of here that are just there to collect the dollar. They're not there to really educate.
Well, that's so true, because here in Illinois, first of all, the graduation rate in the Black community and in our children is 80 to 90% graduating out of high school. But those that are graduating, they're graduating unintelligent children.
Right.
Because when they get out of high school, most of them can barely read and write.
Or do math.
Come on. And the classes that they're teaching our children are the homosexual classes, the gay stuff. I mean, the pedophile stuff, all of that. So you're talking about, if you catch a child, and this is one of the biggest fights that I've been fighting here in Illinois. How is it that a 5-year-old needs to know the difference between a lesbian and a bisexual?
Right. But they can't read.
They can't read.
But they know their pronouns.
They know their pronouns. And that's the saddest part that affects us, because now we got generations of children who can't even cursive write. They can't even read cursive writing.
No.
They cannot count. They have no critical thinking in their mind. They're totally uneducated. So the Department of Education has failed the American people. So it is only right that President Trump cut it out or streamline it, so that the money is not being funneled to the states with different grants, different programs, and it's not really helping our children, but it is going into the pockets of the politicians. Doc, your thoughts?
Yeah. Like I said, again, it's just sad because now we know where the money's going and what it's been doing and what it hasn't been doing. And I had a thought in my head, and I'm like, but I know, because we talk about so much, and then I get passionate about these things because I have a grandson. And I want to make sure that his education is the best one. And in my opinion, he goes to an amazing school, Indicator. And it is a charter school. It's not a public school, but I see them using the funding because I see his education in him when he's talking, when he's pointing out different things. And he's like, Grandma, that word says yoga. This is, and to a lot of people, they might think that's important, but it is. You want to make sure your children are being educated by the people that are put in charge to do their job. That's all we want in America. I think that's where everybody's at this point. We just want you to do your job. We don't want you to waste the resources. Oh, that's what it was. President Trump also brought this up, that we pay the highest per capita for our students.
Yes.
However, our students are at the bottom of the education line, ranking 40th. Like, how do we rank 40th, but we're paying the most for each student? That means somewhere there is some waste, fraud, and abuse. Period.
Well, you know what, Doc? The thing of it is, too, is that when you're talking about education, we touched on this before, there needs to be a level of learning, because how can you continue to pass children on when how can you get to be 10 or 12 years old? You can't even read barely. You can barely write. You have no thinking of your own. But you can tell everybody about the social world. And I think that's one of the things. I think another thing that needs to happen too, and J.B. Pritzker is doing this in the state, even though he's a rotten governor. He's talking about banning cell phones in the classroom.
Well, he wants those cell phones banned so they don't get caught doing stuff that they're not supposed to do. That's why he wants those cell phones on. But I mean, I'm even a product of public schooling. And unfortunately, when I graduated from high school, I had a 5th grade reading level. And so our reading levels weren't really challenged in school. And what I mean by that is there wasn't really an emphasis on where you at your reading level, 7th grade, 8th grade. And if you're not, we're going to send you to the reading lab so you can get up to your reading level, and I found out in college, and I was actually able to get up to my college reading level, but it took testing in college to understand where I was. And that's what shouldn't have happened, right? This should have been found out before I even graduated from the 6th grade. if I only had a 5th grade reading level, how am I getting through the 6th, 7th, 8th, all the way up to high school graduation, and I'm at a 5th grade reading level? That should have never happened.
Well, that's when the dumbing down started after the 70s, because when I was coming up in the 60s and 70s, if you did not learn a certain reading level, they kept you in the grade until you learned.
Yes. Period.
They wasn't just going to pass you on. You had to be able to take tests. You had to be able to read at a certain level.
Yes.
Because I know for sure when I graduated from grammar school in 1970, and at the time, in order to get into high school, you had to know the Constitution, and you had to have at least a 9th grade reading level.
Wow.
And what that meant is that if you're in 8th grade, you had to know and how to understand high school work.
Right.
And so at that time, teachers was teaching us to get prepared for high school. They're not doing that now.
No.
The kids are just going to school. Their teachers are being babysitters. They're teaching them all this other stuff instead of reading and writing. So they're struggling when they get to the 6th and 7th grade. And they'll even struggle more coming to high school because there are no parameters. There's no boundaries that they have to, there is no benchmarks that the children have to achieve in order to go to the next level.
Yeah.
And after the 70s, they started to dummy down the children. They started lowering the test score levels. What used to be 100 used to be an A. Now you can be at 60 and 70 and get a B or an A.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. There was no concerns by the teachers nor the Department of Education to ensure that our children, who we spend the most money on, let's take a look at the fact that the money that is spent here in the state on each child, it depends on the district, but it is high. I mean, they're giving a lot of money. Some places getting $10,000, $15,000 per child.
Right.
To go to school, and yet they're not learning anything at that rate. So it's justifiable. But to the American people and patriots across this country, I want you to do one thing. Quit allowing CNN, MSNBC, and all the rest of these local channels who are purveying hate against this current government and saying that what he is doing is not good for the American people. Because the last 4 years, we have actually seen everything that an administration could do that can harm the American people. Under Joe Biden and the Obamas, they tried to destroy our country. They tried to destroy our freedoms. They did everything to suppress, take our guns. The American people and patriots across this country, if you can't see that the Democrats are wounded so bad because President Trump is using Doge to find the money that they're stealing out of our pockets and not teaching our children anything. And in saying that, Doc, I want to play another clip because what Elon Musk is doing, and to the American people and patriots, we have to stop listening to people like Maxine Waters, Stacey Abrams, and all of these people who have been stealing the money. They've been stealing money through these different programs, and I mean, it's a total sham. And this is what we have to do. We have to let Elon Musk stay positively behind him and let him finish finding all this waste, fraud, and abuse. Let me play this clip.
Doge is cutting big. It's now claiming $105 billion in savings and counting, about $650 per American taxpayer. And President Trump, he's coming with the receipts. Watch.
Just listen to some of the appalling waste. $22 billion from HHS to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens. $45 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships in Burma. $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. Nobody knows what that is. You're going to find out where that money's going, and it's not going to be pretty. Put more money in the pockets of American families.
Yeah.
But just this morning, the Supreme Court throwing Musk and Doge a slight roadblock. It is upholding a judge's order forcing the Trump administration to pay out nearly $2 billion in U.S. aid payments. And I want to circle back to that last point about this latest kind of blow in the courts. But before we get to that, Brian, I want to talk more.
Doc, let's talk about that. Now, you see what they just said.
Mm-hmm.
They gave $2 billion, the courts, and this is why I say these Democratic judges are trying to throw roadblocks because what Doge is doing is uncovering all of these Democratic leaders who have been stealing the taxpayer dollars.
Right.
That's what this is.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Go ahead. This is the Democratic judge who are trying to throw this roadblock, and then I'm going to tell the American people what's going to actually happen. Go ahead, Doc.
Well, I find it astounding because, first of all, the administration, executive part, they are in charge of the budget. They're supposed to go through the budget and find out this is not efficient for the American people. We need to spend their money better. I mean, I'm not trying to be condescending, but that's what we're doing. And we literally have judges legislating from the bench because they have no business interjecting into the executive branch. We did not vote them into office. We voted Donald Trump into office to do what he's doing. And for them to have tried to cause an injunction to stop or maybe even force them to pay out something that they have no idea what it's even about. You know, even if it's life-threatening, guess what? The president has the right to say, we're not going to put money into that right now. We're going to put money into that later. I would have to go over like what the $2 billion is for. But if somebody's fighting for it, that means they're being threatened by somebody on the other end. Like, you better get my money. No, you better get my money and you better make him pay my money because no, we need to take a step back. $2 billion, that's a lot of money. You know, that's nothing to sneeze at.
Well, Doc, you know, that was the whole thing with Stacey Abrams.
Yes.
How could a person that has little experience dealing with grants get $2 billion to disseminate for energy crisis?
Like I told you before, I told you that EPA put a grant together because I had worked on a similar grant with somebody. And yes, when reading through it, I was like, wow, they don't really need to have a lot of knowledge.
No.
They just need to be the right kind of company and basically check the boxes for this grant. Like I said, at the end of it, there was somebody at the end of it going, okay, Stacey, get your ducks in a row. We're going to make sure that, you're, front in line maybe to get this grant. And she got it. She got it fair and square. Whether the contract is trash or not, she still got it fair and square. Now, here's the deal. Let's get to the trash part of it. Is there anything illegal going on within the contract itself? That's the question, because she got it fair and square. But what is it about the contract that has the illegalities to it? Because it can always be rescinded if it's not proper. And that's the other side of this that we need to look at.
Well, those were some of the, because I did look at the grant money and some of the money that she allocated money to. She allocated money to men having sex with other men, like $6.2 million in Africa. She sent millions of dollars for research for mice that need to be transgendered. I mean, the list of infraction goes on that she has started spending the money for, and that's why they froze it. And this is no, not until we get through examining this before any money goes out. Right. So even though this judge has come back and said, they got to pay it, to the Democrats watching this show, you're never going to see that $2 billion. I can guarantee you that.
No. Because
this injunction to pay it is not going to stand up when the president of the United States has that under his belt.
Right.
It's his decision to make if he wants to give money or not.
Right.
So what they're doing is they're just trying to throw a wrench in there to stop Doge, but Doge is not going to stop because as they continue to uncover these things, they're going to discover more than $2 billion. I can guarantee you that, Doc.
Absolutely. I'm glad they're at the $105 billion mark. I know there's been rustlings of us, getting some of our money back. And the funniest thing I heard is somebody was like, oh, that's going to raise inflation. I'm like, no, it's not. We're just getting our money back. It's just like
Yes.
recycling the dollars. See, unlike COVID, where we printed money, this is not going to be a printed money situation. We're just going to get money back in our pockets that's already
Yes.
in circulation. Totally
Yes.
different thing. Totally different.
This is our money that have been taken and put on the dark side.
Yeah.
And now that we're finding it back, it's coming back to the taxpayers. But see, that's what the demos are doing. They'll keep saying, well, no, this money is going to raise it. It's going to cause inflation. No, that's a big lie, because if the money has already been out there, that's our money, and we're recovering it. It comes back to us. So the American people need to understand the money that they're finding is coming back to our pockets.
Right. Exactly. And that's where it needs to be anyway.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because, unfortunately, we are in a recession. It's unfortunate, but there's just been a lot of mismanagement of funds. And I hold both parties responsible.
I do too.
They just passed a continuing resolution that's going to take us to September. They still have, I think it's been close to 10 years that they haven't passed a clean budget. I mean, that's a long time. I mean, Congress needs to really get it together. I think they can do it if they really work. And I mean work. I'm not talking about campaigning and boo-hooing about who's doing what, but really do their jobs. They can actually get this done this year and pass a clean budget.
Well, I'm seeing with a Republican House and Senate, and common sense, the American taxpayers are going to be able to realize and see all the money that has been stolen, because with this Congress being Republican, they're going to make sure that whatever monies that's needed is going to be there, not like the Democrats. And that's why you hear so many Democratic leaders coming out complaining, because they've been getting an extra paycheck. You would think that the money that the politicians are getting are in six figures just to be a politician. You're talking about per diem and travel. That's a lot of money just to sit around and supposedly to be taking the American people ideas to Congress or whatever to get laws passed to benefit us. And yet, how greedy are you that you are getting paid good, but yet you're stealing more money to put in your pocket? That's just sheer greed, Doc.
Oh, yeah. And they've been doing it for a long time. These government contracts, I mean, it is a lucrative business, especially if you have relatives that you can use to get the contract. So a lot of this wealth that some of these Congress individuals have attained, it's through those contracts. That's how they've been able to build up their wealth portfolios outside of insider trading.
Yes.
Right.
That's
So
Nancy Pelosi.
Right. And it's both parties. It's not just one-sided. I actually came up with a list.
Well, you know what? That's good, because how can you be broke as a joke like Barack Obama was, and now he's one of the richest politicians in the country?
Right. Well,
him and his wife.
Right. They set themselves up very well. Like, yes, they have book deals, but I mean,
that's like you don't get. He's worth billions of dollars right now, and that's not even counting the money that they've stole.
Exactly. So a lot of that was, part of the insider trading that was allowed while they were in Congress. But the other part of that is to government contracts. A lot of people just don't see it. And I got a list, and basically between 2017 and 2023. So in 2017, they had about $507 billion in government contracts. By 2023, it crawled up to $759 billion. And so some of those areas were like NASA, where you've got a company. Well, yeah, NASA, they got approximately 26.4 billion between 2011 and 2023. There was another area called ground-based strategic deterrent. What is that? Well, let me tell you. In September of 2020, the U.S. Air Force awarded Northrop Grumman and everybody knows who they are. They're in defense. They got a contract for $13.3 billion. Okay. And then you've got a joint warfighting cloud capability. This is another Department of Defense contract for $9 billion. And then Boeing got a contract, and it was roughly about 1.8 billion increase over their initial estimates. So a lot of these are in our defense, where a lot of people will say, well, of course we need these, but these are just the defense contracts. This isn't every other area, you know, where Trump had mentioned some of those. He was like, where is this place? I don't know what that is. Why are we spending money over here? Because a lot of these contracts come up because somebody says, hey, we have a need in this area and we need $20 million. And then some senator goes, okay, you need $20 million. Okay, let's take care of that. And it's turned into a contract. And then there's a company that's there to receive the contract. Well, they only have to spend 20% of that contract on what it's for.
Yes.
Just 20%. They can take the other 80% and do what they want to. This is like, you may not like McCain, but this is the one thing that I agreed with him on. He called it pork barrel spending.
Yes.
This is what that is.
Like $3.2 million for Michelle Obama to have a trail named after her. I mean, all that ridiculous stuff that has been put into the budget, the overall budget.
Yeah.
And that's why you never see those dollars, because if Elon Musk was not pulling all of these things out, some of the American people could see it. We wouldn't know like we have not known for years.
Right. Exactly.
You would think, now think about this, Doc. And to the American people and patriots, think about this. All the money that they're finding now, if that money was put back into the American people, we would be getting all sorts of checks, because America is a company. We are the stockholders. We should be getting checks back, refund checks back on our money and investments that have been made across the country, across the world.
Yeah.
But see, that's the trick. The politicians are saying, oh no, America, we gonna put this pork barrel spending into the budget, so all the money will come out that you will just barely break even, or you will always be in debt.
Yeah. And I mean, it's something that's very sad. I'm glad that DOJ is finding the monies that they are finding, because to your point, the American people need to see it, and they need to understand how wasteful our government has been. And you know what? And I hate to say it like this, it's okay, because at least now we know who we need to hold responsible. So no one can no longer go back and say, well, this really didn't happen. No, it happened. And we saw it. And we know how disgraceful you've utilized the money. I mean, Social Security alone, there should never be a time where a Social Security number is used more than once. Or where somebody over a certain age is still receiving funds as if they're alive at 145 years old. That's not a thing.
Let's play a little bit more of this clip, and we're going to talk about that.
Or about how the Democrats are kind of painting the work of DOJ.
Oh, yeah.
We just heard from Alyssa Slotkin there just a moment ago. Here's more of what Representative Subra Mayam, a Democrat from Virginia, said. DOJ is not about getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse and improving government efficiency. It's about control over federal workers and institutions and revenge over political opponents. Are they winning a war over just how we understand DOJ in the public sphere?
Well, they're trying to. You know, the Slotkin thing is interesting, right? Because she says, oh, we need a more efficient government, and I'll help you with that. But it shouldn't be chaotic. Well, their word for chaos in reality is just being aggressive, just moving. What they don't like is Elon Musk is being aggressive. Can I add to you one of my favorite examples? So this is the Inter-American Foundation. Have you ever heard of the Inter-American Foundation? Me neither. Nobody has. It was created in 1969 by Congress, okay?
Wow.
Issues grants to countries in Latin America and Caribbean. Let me give you an example of some of the grants that they do, just to add to the great list that Trump had. $903,000 for alpaca farming in Peru, okay? $813,000 for vegetable gardens in El Salvador.
Oh, come on.
$731,000 to improve marketability of mushrooms and peas in Guatemala, okay? We should not do any of that. No. With a government with $36 trillion in debt, we should not do any of that. That's Elon Musk's very basic proposition. Trump laid it out beautifully last night. Democrats hate it because Elon Musk is finding things like this that we've never heard of and you could never justify. And to that last quote you read, it does threaten their power hold over the bureaucracy, which is their hold on democracy when they're not in office.
It also threatens their pockets. I mean, who runs those organizations? Who's getting paid to administer this kind of stuff? That's what, I mean, think.
Oh, you know the average salary in that agency? It's like $130,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. I mean, it's not that this is, it's grand theft. This is, they're stealing. They stole hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. That's where the real accountability needs to go. And if you start to go after these organizations and you start to pull down one facade after another, at some point you're going to say, by the way, who got paid what and how and who offered them the job? I mean, this thing really could blow up. This could be Watergate times a million. You know,
all that money in a little circle right around Washington, D.C., going into Northern Virginia, going to Maryland. And this is what people do when they get out of government office. If you lose your election, you go into one of these organizations and you score money. I mean, this is how the parties could sustain. And let me tell you, not just the Democrats, friends, also Republicans.
That's what I was saying. I was like, it's both parties.
It's on its whole mission to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. They at first said they were going to cut about $2 trillion, and they were looking as a whole, and they were looking to return maybe around $5,000 to each taxpayer. We're only at around $650 now. Do you think they're feeling the pressure to really deliver?
No, I mean, listen, they understand there's a clock. There's the debt clock that was always running. There's also midterm election clock that's always running, and there's this kind of thing. But I just want to read something from this Harvard Harris poll. One, there's the question, do you believe the current level of U.S. federal government debt is sustainable or unsustainable? 67% unsustainable. Do you think the U.S. government should move in the next few years to balance the budget, or is that unrealistic and should it continue to run significant deficits? 83% said no. We want to move to balance the budget. So the American public is behind this 1,000,000%.
Can I just give you one other fact here? We talk about the top line, $36 trillion, almost 37. The debt per taxpayer, okay? Debt per taxpayer, everybody on this panel, most of the people in this building, $323,000. What if you had to pay that bill right now? I mean, it's unsustainable. We are broke. Biden gave us a bankrupt country.
Well, it brings up this debate. And Charles, you remind me of it when you do talk about the work that you do with the charter school in Harlem. Brian, I think of you because we have this debate at our church where we want to send missionaries to Africa to spread the world of Jesus. And bear with me, I'm going to come back to money. I promise. I know it's the first day of Lent. But the other half of our congregation says, but look at Main Street and look at the drug dealers and the homeless and the people who need our help in our own neighborhood. And so it brings up this debate where we can't help the world, to your point, Brian, until we take care of our own. And we're only as strong as our weakest link here. So if we can help pay off our debt here, then we will be strong enough to spread the good word to the rest of the world, whatever that is. And I'm not saying we have to withdraw all funding to some of our allies. But when you're talking about peas and vegetables, that's where I'm thinking that's why we got to kind of refocus and take care of our own, get our own house in order before we start going abroad and spreading the word.
It's such a good point. And by the way, there's so much documented research on the fact that this aid that we send overseas often doesn't help the people who get it because it creates a dependency on the aid, a dependency on America. Sometimes it crowds out local industry. So all I'm saying is even if we think some of this is doing good, it's definitely doing good, Jerry, for the people in D.C. who are getting six-figure salaries and living off this year after year. It's highly questionable how much it's helping the people who we say it's helping.
Well, you know, what you see is that this money goes out year after year. And these programs, you know, it's like sedimentation, right? It lays on another layer of more payment and more payment and more payment. And there's just no respect for taxpayer money. I think the taxpayers need more respect in this situation. We need to realize we're wasting our money when it could go to things that could really make a big difference.
And this is exactly what Justice Alito wrote about in his scathing dissent today on that Supreme Court case that I mentioned just moments ago, where essentially the Supreme Court said, hey, you know what, Trump administration, you can't stop the payments on these government contracts. You must pay out on $2 billion worth of government contracts on foreign aid. Justice Alito saying this, quote, does a single district court judge, that's the lower court judge that will order these contracts be paid, who likely lacks jurisdiction, have unchecked power to compel the government of the United States to pay out $2 billion in taxpayer dollars? The answer to that question should be an emphatic no.
Well,
But a majority of this court apparently thinks otherwise. I am stunned.
Well, the courts never had a problem when we were doling out the money. But now all of a sudden, sometimes there is a problem when now we want to pull back the money.
Because there's kickbacks. Come on.
When we get to the question about who's deciding what we're
honoring
paying.
a contract? So, I mean, I just saw the headline, so I don't know the nitty gritty of it, but was the Supreme Court, was this based on just of us honoring something that we'd already signed a contract?
I think it was work done.
The question is about work done, and the Trump administration was challenging this, saying that they at least wanted to suspend the payments, and the district court judges getting actually entered an order saying these payments are being made too slowly, you need to accelerate them. And what Alito was saying here is, does the district court judge get to say that? He's really questioning the jurisdictional power, to your point about who gets to decide what we're paying here. In this case,
I mean, we get a lot of that stuff anyway already, like, you know, shopping for different courts, different districts, and things like that, gaming the system.
That's why we keep lawyers on this panel. Very helpful in situation.
Doc, you see, go ahead.
It's great. Well, because at the end of the day, a lot of people will say, well, you're not honoring the contract because if I did the work, then you need to pay me the money. There's a difference with the government contracts because there actually is a stipulation in there that says, you know, the government has the right to actually withhold anything until they see the performance, right?
Exactly.
So until an actual audit is done and they go in and say, okay, well, what did you do the work for? You might get some of the money, but you may not get all of the money. So thank you for challenging it, because now it is truly going to be audited.
Well, you know, and that's the whole thing with government contracting is that you have to prove up. There's different types of contracts. Some are performance contracts. You get a certain amount of money each year of the contract due to the performance that you have done. In other words, you have to be able to prove what you say that you are doing in order to get the next year of money. And see, what they've done is remove those performance contracts and said, okay, you'll get the money if you meet this certain criteria, but you really don't have to prove to us at this point that you're doing the work. And that's what this is happening here, because they said they did the work. Doge is saying we need to see the receipts. We need to see the work that you said that you have done. And that is the problem why they don't. And they're taking it to court, trying to force them to get the money. Because just like you said, Doc, somebody owes somebody some money and they trying to get that money in their pocket because somebody could come up missing if they ain't getting paid.
Look, hit dogs are hollering loudly. I'm just saying, all over the place. It's bad. It is truly bad. And I also want to, you know, go back and listen to this again, to the gentleman that was saying the agency that was created in 1969. I would really like to see who created it and who's a part of it, right? Because the other correspondent on the panel also said, you know, a lot of these congressmen and women and a lot of government officials, they'll start working for these agencies after they leave their certain positions in Washington. So I'm like, wow, so y'all just been laundering money forever and just comfortable with it. You're just okay with it. And I'm not saying that everybody is, but there are certain people that have been okay with it for a long time, because why are we sending millions of dollars? What he said, he listed 3 things that came up to close to $2 million in another country. And then the other panelist was like, we have homeless people here that can use those resources, but we're sending those resources overseas. We're not even helping our people here. That's a problem.
And you know what, Doc, to the American people and patriots across this country, we should be highly upset because we've watched an invasion that was paid with our tax dollars, brought to the United States under the Biden administration. They clearly know what they did. They don't even care what the American people think, because when they open up those borders, they pretty much said, to hell with what the Americans think. We out here now. We got to get this money. We got to force these migrants in so that we can use them to vote. That's what we've been seeing, America.
Yeah.
We've been seeing gangsters stealing money, dealing with the cartel, stealing children. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And that's a shame, because we deserve better leadership. And that's what the problem is. You know, just like here in Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson was at the Congress last week on the 5th, I believe, testifying. And he spent the whole time reading off a script.
Wow.
A whole time reading off a script. And there was no sense that he talked. There was no solutions. He didn't bring anything to the table to answer any questions. He kept reading about, well, anyway, let me play this clip. A friend of mine, Representative Byron Daniels, he and I was together, and you look on my Facebook page, we was together at the inauguration. And he and I talked about that. I talked to him about Brandon Johnson, and I told him how the city of Chicago was suffering under this leadership. So Brandon, that was my boy. He already know. Listen, I told him everything about Brandon Johnson. And so this is just the beginning. Brandon is about to go to jail, because let me play this clip, and then I'll tell you why he's going to go to jail.
From Florida.
Thank you, Chairman. This is my third term on the Oversight Committee. We've been talking about illegal immigration and oversight the entire time. I remember we had a group of this committee that went down to the El Paso section of the border. This was back in February, March of 2021. And during that time period, we were at one of the holding centers, and there were these buses that were coming to the detention facility, and they were picking up 30 kids, 50 kids at random, walking out of the facility. And when I went over to question the bus driver that was transporting these kids, border agents told me, as a member of Congress, that you're not allowed to question the bus driver. And of course, people knowing me, I didn't take no for an answer, and I repeated the question. And I was told that this bus of children was leaving El Paso and going to San Diego. And so what was occurring under the Biden administration is that they were busing unaccompanied minors all across the United States for one reason and one reason only. And that was because they did not want the press to see the pictures of kids in cages. They did not want to see our borders being overrun. They wanted to disperse that problem all through the United States. That is the reckless history of illegal immigration under Joe Biden.
Can you pause it real quick?
Party.
Yes.
Mayor Johnston of Denver.
I want to interject on this really quick.
Yes.
And I've talked about it on this show before. Unaccompanied minors. Aliens. He just talked about it. In the Appropriations Act in 2021, they set aside $12 billion to give to NGOs. So what Byron Donalds is talking about was actually paid for with our tax dollars. It wasn't a random act. Okay. They actually called them unaccompanied minor aliens, and they set aside money to do it. So I just wanted to interject that.
Well, and I want to say this too. If you remember, 385,000 unaccompanied children got across the border when Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and George Bush rented a private charter plane company and flew those children across the border into the United States, and they disappeared.
Yeah.
They're unaccounted for right now. We don't know where those children are. This is no more than child trafficking. That's what America has become. America, we've allowed people to be legislators. We've allowed them to be leaders of our country, and they're nothing but thugs and pedophiles and all the rest of that. And this shows 385,000 children missing. And here the Representative Brian Daniels is saying, we saw it with our own eyes. This is something we didn't hear, but we saw it with our own eyes. Let's go a little more.
Right.
You lamented earlier that there were 10 to 11 buses coming per day to your city. Did you ever talk to Joe Biden about why this was happening to your community?
Thank you, Congressman. I both reached out to Governor Abbott from Texas. He didn't respond, and I did.
Why would you reach out to Governor Abbott of Texas when it is Joe Biden, the former commander-in-chief, that opened up our borders? Why didn't you talk to him?
Well, our buses directly were being sent from Governor Abbott in Texas, so that was why we reached out to say we're happy to collaborate on a coordinated entry system. We understand no one state or no one city should bear the entire brunt of this, but let's collaborate. But I did.
So I'm glad you said that, because that brings me to my next point. Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis, when they started moving illegal aliens out of their states who were bearing the brunt of what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were doing, and they've sent them to Denver, they sent them to Chicago, they sent them to New York, they sent them to Martha's Vineyard. The reason why they did that is because you four could hide behind the realities of illegal immigration on border towns all through our country and on cities and states who did not want to see illegal immigration, but did not have the political representation to go to the White House. And only when it showed up on your doorstep did you get upset. Mayor Johnston, coming back to you, how much did your city spend on illegal immigration? Do you have a round number?
Over the last couple of years on all newcomers, whatever their status was, it's around $79 million since 2022.
$79 million. Mayor Johnson, Chicago. How much has the city of Chicago spent on illegal immigration?
If you're referring to the 2022 up to 2024 of the buses coming from Texas, roughly the same percentage of the state of Texas, about 1% of our overall budget.
What is that? Because I don't have the city's budget in front of me. Numbers.
It's 1%, and if you want the actual calculation, we can make sure someone.
You're the mayor. You don't have the math in front of you.
It's 1% of the overall budget.
Idiot.
For the last
Right, that's
4
why
years,
you're a failing
which
mayor.
is
Mayor
the same
Adams,
number that
how
was
much did the
sent from
city of
us
New
from
York
the
actually
state
spend
of
on
Texas.
illegal immigration? Mayor Johnson, I already asked you. You don't have a hard number, and if you don't have a hard number, you're not running your city well. Mayor Adams, how much did the city of New York actually spend on illegal immigration?
$6.9 billion of taxpayers'
$6.9 billion of taxpayer money on a problem that was fostered on the American people. Mayor Wu, in the city of Boston, how much did you spend?
We don't ask about immigration status and delivering city
You don't
services,
ask
so
about
we
how
don't
much
have
money
that
the city of Boston has spent on illegal immigration?
We
Are
don't
you out of your
distinguish
mind?
between immigration status.
Do you
as
manage
part
your
of our
budget
city
or not,
policies.
Mayor Wu?
That is how we keep
Mayor
our city
Wu,
safe.
do you manage
we
your
have
budget
the
or not?
numbers to prove it. I manage my budget. I have a AAA bond rating dating back 10 years.
So to the city of Boston,
budget.
just understand that your mayor does not care how much of your resources she has spent on people who are not citizens
The city
of
of Boston
the city of
is
Boston.
sick of having
I'm
people
reclaiming my
outside
time.
Boston
Mr.
telling
Bear,
us what
Mr.
we
Bear, I have
need.
a question for you because I understand Cato's perspective when it comes to illegal immigration. I understand that the Cato Institute for a long time has had a standard of actually having open immigration into the United States. Generally speaking, I don't want to get into specifics.
We support legal immigration. We want immigration to be legal.
Let me ask you this question, because one of the great libertarians of the modern era, Milton Friedman, famously said, you can either have open borders or a welfare state, but you have to choose. Mr. Beer, what do you choose?
Milton Friedman said he wanted to allow illegal immigration to continue. I disagree with Milton Friedman's position on that. We should have legal immigration and build a wall around the welfare state, not around the country. That's in the best interest of taxpayers.
And I would argue that under the current system where you have sanctuary cities popping up, it is not possible to build that wall. So America has to choose. Mr. Beer, you're done. America has to choose between securing our nation or protecting the taxpayer. I choose secure the nation. I yield back.
Now,
I mean,
Doc,
he's not wrong. He's not wrong.
exactly right.
We have to secure we have borders. Do we have borders or not? Do we have laws or not?
We do.
Right. And so for the past 4 years, unfortunately, we did not have a border and we did not have laws. I mean, unfortunately, I've seen different podcasts with Jasmine Crockett saying it's not an illegal act to cross our borders. She literally said it's a civil matter. Well, it's a misdemeanor initially, and then it's a federal issue if you return illegally after your first slap on the hand. But it's still criminal activity. Either way.
Yes.
So for someone who actually has a Juris Doctorate, right?
Yeah, right.
And a member of Congress to say this isn't illegal activity, it's disheartening. I don't even know where to go from here. I'm like, why are you here?
Let me say this. Ignorance is blitz. because we do have educated people who can barely read and write. They bought their degrees. They do not understand or nor have common sense. They always are able to try to talk that educational rhetoric, but at the same time, they do not implement, nor do they understand, or do they want to understand what's going on. They're basically nothing but robots, and they're doing what they're told. Now, to Brandon Johnson, he got back from the meeting. He was tolling himself around like he really did something by surviving. Brandon, you really made and showed America how much of an idiot that you really are. To not to know the budget. Now, let me tell you about the budget. The budget is like $171 billion.
Ooh.
No, it's about $17 billion.
Okay.
It's $17 billion. 1% of $17 billion is $171 million.
Okay.
So far, if we go off that budget, he has spent $171 million of the taxpayers'
So
money.
more than any mayor up there,
right,
on the panel.
I'm not even the mayor, but I know the budget. The budget was $17 billion. And so if you say 1%, that's $171 million of the budget. That's what he has spent. But that's a lie, because he has spent more money than you could imagine.
Yeah.
He has spent more money. And he don't want to say it because, see, what they did here in Illinois, and to the American people, the patriots across this country, you might want to start checking your budget. Because what they did was they allocated that money and put it in different places. So now, just like you see all those things about 6 million here, 5 million here, 800,000 for peas and carrots, they did the same thing here in the state of Illinois. But what I want to say to Brandon Johnson, see, you are an idiot. Brandon Johnson, you're going to watch this show tonight. Your ass finna go to prison. You're going to prison because J.B. Pritzker set you up.
Yeah.
J.B. Pritzker set him up. And in order for J.B. to try to keep his office, because he finna be thrown out of office, he had to sell Brandon out and make the people of the state think that it's all Chicago's fault, that we can't balance a budget, that all the money that's been in the state has gone to Chicago for illegals. Part of it is true. But J.B. Pritzker, he has stole so much money. This state needs a Doge's budget right away, because when they do it, they're going to find out all the money. There's never been a balanced budget in the state of Illinois under J.B. Pritzker's leadership. Never.
Wow.
But he makes it seem as though, because nobody is challenging them, he has a Democratic Senate and representatives here, so they can do whatever they want to do. But a Doge will take care of this. And Brandon, this is just how stupid you are. J.B. Pritzker has robbed different programs to take money. He has robbed the rental assistance program here in the state of Illinois. He has robbed all sorts of other programs to help the American citizens. And when they go for help, there's no money in the program to help the citizens, because all of the money that's supposed to be in the program to help the citizens have been given to illegals. Brandon, you can laugh your ass off all if you want to, but I got a little birdie that called me last night and told me you're going to go to prison because you took all the money out of HUD.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? See, he don't even understand what he done. J.B. Pritzker told him to take all the money out of HUD. Brandon took all the money out of HUD, and a little birdie told me last night that's why he's going to go to prison, because he took federal money out of HUD and gave it to the illegal aliens. So this is my last clip. I'm going to pray for you, Brandon. And just like I told you, your ass is going to jail. I can guarantee you that.
With federal immigration authorities regarding individuals' immigration status, yes or no?
We do not collect immigration status in law enforcement.
I'd just like to point out, and Mr. Chairman, if I could enter the Boston Trust Act into the record. Mr. Chairman.
Without objection to ordered.
Thank you. On section 4AA, a law enforcement official and employment of the city department, agency, or commission shall not, and then A, inquire of an individual on his or her immigration status. Under Title 8, U.S. Code subsection 1373 stipulates that local governments cannot prohibit or restrict communication with federal immigration authorities regarding individuals' immigration status, so your enforcement of this act is in direct violation of that statute. Can you please confirm?
That is not
Thank
the
you, ma'am.
truth.
That's a U.S. code. I don't know about you, but U.S. code does not lie.
We do not ask about
Mayor
immigration
Johnson, I'm not
status, and that
talking
is
to you
what
anymore.
makes
Next
us safe as a
question,
city.
Mayor Johnston, you said in your testimony that the first step you took after illegal aliens arrived was to provide them with housing. Is that correct, yes or no?
Folks that were on the streets freezing to death, we gave access to shelter. Yes, we did.
Thank you. Not to be rude here, but you have a good understanding of what the definition of harboring is, correct?
I do.
Okay. For those that might not, harboring means to knowingly or recklessly provide shelter or place to stay for an illegal alien. And according to Title 8 of U.S. Code subsection 1324, that is also a federal crime. Just to be clear, did you also say that you would be willing to go to jail to stop deportation efforts?
I did say that I'd be willing to stand up for all of our residents, and
He said
the
it.
context was that was the point at which the administration was threatening to deploy the U.S. military to streets of our cities to
Okay.
pull kids out of schools and churches,
Thank
so we
you.
were worried about that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record an article from CBS.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. In this, it says, Johnson said earlier this week that he's willing to use civil disobedience and, if necessary, going to jail to stop deportations. My final question would be for you, Mr. Mayor Johnson. Do you believe that Chicago's welcoming city ordinance encourages illegal aliens to enter the United States, specifically into Chicago? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. So you don't believe that banning the transfer of individuals into ICE custody for the purpose of civil immigration enforcement encourages illegal immigration into Chicago? Or how about agencies, sorry, one second, or agents not being able to stop, arrest, or detain individuals based solely on their immigration status or administrative warrant?
So we comply with all laws, local, state, and federal.
To me, after this line of questioning, it's very clear that these policies that you have all implicated are active and alive and well in your cities, are in direct violation with U.S. Title 8 Code subsection 1324, and is a federal offense. But you all speak about a broken immigration system, and yet here you guys are aiding and abetting in that entire process. I want to be very clear about something. Open border policies, which is something that you guys are talking about, hurts people on both sides, meaning the people that are coming here illegally and then American citizens as well. I do not think you guys are bad people, but I think that you are ideologically misled, which is why, unfortunately, based on your responses, I'm all going to be criminally referring you to the Department of Justice for investigation. And as soon as I leave here, these will be going over to Pam Bondi. I'm not doing that in an effort to bully you guys, but I do believe that your policies are hurting the American people, and you can make that known with the evidence that you can present to the Department of Justice. But if you guys continue doing what you're doing, you're not going to help anyone. You're going to hurt more people, and that's exactly why I'm tired of it. The American people are tired of it. And Chairman, I yield my time.
Doc, your last words, we got to get out of here. Well, she said it all, didn't she?
Look, she did. She gavel down. I'm glad that she referred them for criminal activity. That's what needs to happen. Pam Bondi has got a lot on her plate. I know I've just over the past week or so, people are like, we want the Epstein files. We want this. She is one person. She has a whole department of attorneys underneath her within her job, within the Department of Justice. So I just need people to give her a minute.
Yep.
So she can sort through things, because the Epstein files, that's a whole huge matter with the FBI. Cash Patel's working on that.
Cash is working on that.
Right. Yep. And now we have these mayors, right, that have been aiding and abetting and harboring criminals. They're criminals. They're not migrants. They did not come here legally. They are criminals. And by proxy, they've made their children criminals. And these are people that need to be removed from our country, right?
As soon as possible.
Right. And with that said, when you see all these things happening, just know that your redemption is near. I want to see all people safe. I want to make sure that they're safely sent back to their country. And I want to make sure that if they do want to apply for immigration, but legally, right?
Yes.
Our immigration system, is it broken? Yes. Can it be fixed? Yes. But that doesn't mean you just jump the line and come here illegally because you don't want to wait. Because there are people that have done it the right way, right? And with that, I just want people to check out the USA Redemption Party at usaredemptionparty.com. We are looking for candidates to be servants of the people and not politicians like the mayors you saw. We do not want that. We want servants of the people that actually want to do right by the people. And we are also looking for members of the party. So please check us out at usaredemptionparty.com.
Doc, thank you so much. And we'll be getting together tomorrow to put it out there again. Blessings to you and have a great evening. Folks, I want to thank you for tuning in. We had a great show, and this show is about giving out information so the American people will be able to understand what's actually going on, where our money is going, and the people that we need to hold accountable. To Mayor Johnson and all the other mayors, after the evidence in the hearing, I can almost promise you that you will be going to prison. And Mayor Johnson, the money that you stole from HUD and all the other monies that you've stolen will send you to prison for a long time. And in saying that, folks, I appreciate you. We got to get out of here. Blessings to you. Thank you for listening, and share it around. Let the truth be told. Let the truth be told. I'd rather for you to hurt me with the truth than comfort me with a lie. I'll see you tomorrow.